Hello, Soundies. Welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 3rd of August already, 2025. Great to have you here. Hope everybody's doing well. I am operating solo today because Danny is out unearthing fossils in the far-flung corners of the western U.S. She loves doing it. She's a paleontologist. This is perfect for her. So we're going to, I guess, have a hangout on our own today. You're listening right now, by the way, to the Earthworks Ethos. We'll get to the Neumann U87 in just a couple of minutes here, but let's go to our, let's go to our agenda here. Oh, I forgot to update the date. It's actually the 3rd of August. Sorry about that. I miss her already. A couple of things. First of all, this is a workshop that goes along with our courses over at school.learnlightandsound.com, of course. And today we're talking about the Neumann U87 Ai large diaphragm multi-pattern condenser microphone. And we do have a couple of questions that were submitted ahead of time. So we'll take a look at those as well. All right. Why are we doing this? Why are we talking about ridiculously expensive microphones on a live stream like this? And I have been criticized. There are people that used to watch this live stream that no longer watch it because, quote, it seems like this live stream is about how much money you can spend on audio gear. And that is not the point of the live stream. So why are we doing this? I think inquisitive minds always want to know, does this expensive microphone that is legendary in so many ways, does it somehow sound magical on my voice? Is it something that would make me sound 15% better? Or to make the audio that I record 15% better with a sheen and a gravity to it that is just something that would really make your eyes twinkle and your heart warm, and and it's something we all experience at one point or another. And the question is, does this microphone do that? And I think we'll probably get a pretty good answer to that here pretty soon. So first of all, history on this microphone, the Neumann. Well, let me just show it to you, and then we'll talk a little bit about the history, just so you can see it. So I got the black version. It also traditionally comes in a nickel-plated finish. But what you see on the front here is you see obviously the large diaphragm right here. Very traditional design. In fact, it may be the design that kind of inspired a lot of other large diaphragm condenser microphones. You can see the kind of gold plating on let me see if I can get the angle just right. Oh, there it is. There's the gold plating on the capsule there. Maybe that's why it costs that much. Haha. Not really. There are a lot of other things too. So we have a polar pattern selector here. So right now you can see it's set to cardioid. And you can also switch it to, cardioid. There's figure 8 or figure of 8. And then on this side, we have our omnidirectional polar pattern. So technically, this is 2 microphone capsules back to back. There's the other one on the back side here. See if I can get that one to shine through. There it is. There's the back capsule, and there's the front capsule. Using 2 microphone capsules, it's able to achieve these different polar patterns. We also have a couple switches on the back here. We have this one on the left-hand side, which is a high-pass filter. And it's a pretty aggressive one, actually. We'll take a look at that in a moment. And then we also have a minus 10 dB pad over here if you're going to record a particularly loud sound source. On the bottom, of course, we have an XLR output, and there are threads. Let me just see, where are the threads? I don't know exactly where the threads are, but here is the... They must be up above. Oh, they're the larger silver ring inside here on the edges of that. But this is the corresponding Neumann shock mount, kind of a classic elastic design that provides suspension for the microphone, and it has a nut here that you use to attach it. So that's a look at the physics, or the physical makeup of that. But if we go take a look at their website, I don't want to get too much in. I've skipped if you want to go to the description, that's kind of a lot of marketing talk, which is fine. But we'll go straight to the specifications instead. All right, so obviously, as we said, 3 polar patterns, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz frequency range. It's almost a meaningless specification in my mind, but it's not as if probably the microphone drops off entirely at 20 kilohertz. I'm not sure. Many of them don't, and many of them drop off sooner than that. And what is considered drop off? Like how much attenuation? Anyway, we can go on and on about that. Sensitivity, they give it in millivolts per Pascal, plus or minus 1 dB relative to those numbers. So we'll take a look. It doesn't seem to require an enormous amount of gain. Pretty standard for a condenser mic. Output impedance looks like it's 200 ohms. It wants to go into an input with at least 1,000, or I guess it's optimized for 1 kilo ohms or 1,000 ohms. And the noise level. So one of the things they did say here, very low self noise. If we look at that, what does that mean here in practical terms? Here's the standard that you'll see reported on a lot of microphones. 15 dB A-weighted in omni mode, 12 dB A-weighted in cardioid mode, and 14 dB A-weighted when in omnidirectional, figure 8. Max sound pressure level for when the total harmonic distortion reaches 0.5% is 117 dB. Then if you apply that 10 dB pad, you can get up to 127 dB. All right, signal to noise ratio. We have those listed here. A-weighted signal to noise ratio, that goes up because A-weighting essentially rolls off some of the noise, and it mimics how humans hear. So we're less sensitive in the lower frequencies, for example. All right, uses 48 volts phantom power, can manage plus or minus 4 volts from that. And then it does draw 0.8 milliamps in terms of current. 500 grams weight, so on and so forth. Here are the polar patterns. This was interesting when I first looked at these. So here's the figure 8 polar pattern. And notice it does differ. So the dotted line here is 16 kilohertz. That's a higher frequency. And then at the lower 8 kilohertz, half that, it actually picks up a little bit more, slightly off axis. But it does have its null points, as you would expect for a figure of 8 at 90 and 270 degrees. So basically, sensitive on the front, sensitive on the back, less sensitive directly on the 90 and 270 degree axes. This is what the frequency response looks like when you are in figure 8 mode. So it does start to drop off just before you get down to 100 hertz. Then when you apply this high-pass filter, look at this. At 1 kilohertz and below, it's pretty aggressive. So by the time you get down to 200 hertz, it's already attenuated 1, 2, 3, about 7 dB. Once you get down to 100 hertz, it is about almost 12 dB of attenuation. It's rolling stuff off pretty aggressively there. So you see this on a lot of the more classic mics, it seems like. I see this on the MKH50 from Sennheiser as well. If you put it in the context of producing music and you're using this as your vocals, that might not be a bad thing. You're rolling off a lot of that lower frequency where the bass, drum, and the electric bass, for example, lives. So it may be that you're just kind of cleaning things up here. Cardioid, look at this. Thank you, Neumann, for being very honest about what the microphone does in terms of picking up different frequencies. If you look at sort of, especially the less expensive microphones, a lot of times they will, let's just see what RODE does for the NT1A, or the NT1. Let's see, we're going to call the Studio Condenser. Let's go to the NT1 Signature Series. Data sheet, here we go. Okay, we'll make that a lot bigger. Oh no, actually they're pretty forthcoming as well. You can see it's not technically cardioided. It actually is picking up some things on the back, namely the higher frequencies. So this one goes up to 8 kilohertz, and it's definitely got an 8 kilohertz tail on the back there. Yeah, it looks like. Also much narrower pickup for the higher frequencies on the front here. In any case, back to our Neumann, this is what it looks like. So the 16 kilohertz has a small tail, but the 8 kilohertz has a fairly large tail as well, so it's picking up some of that on the back. That is why when you turn a microphone around and talking to the back of it, a cardioid microphone around and talking to the back of it, you are still picking up some of the sound. Likewise, this is what the frequency response looks like. It does look like in cardioid mode, it has a little bit of a presence boost centered around 8 kilohertz or 9 kilohertz. I think the idea there is maybe to get a little bit on the up above the sibilance a little bit, potentially. A lot of sibilance starts at around 5 kilohertz and works its way up. Sometimes you can hear some of it up to 10 kilohertz. But likewise, that high-pass filter is quite aggressive, definitely rolling off, and we'll hear that in just a moment here. And then here's the omnidirectional, and this is interesting as well, because you think of an omnidirectional microphone as picking up from all sides. Well, 16 kilohertz, that's not the case, at least on this microphone. I think it's because it's using the two different capsules and because you're up against the laws of physics as well. Higher frequencies are much more directional. And so, especially if you're using two microphone capsules, you're definitely going to pick up on the front and you're going to pick up on the back. But these sides are not going to pick up nearly as much as 16 kilohertz. Interesting. So this microphone, just to dispel any myths out there, this microphone, while it is legendary and renowned, it is not perfect from an engineering standpoint or from a technical standpoint. And then likewise, the frequency response when you are in omnidirectional mode looks pretty similar. This presence boost might start a little sooner than it does in cardioid mode, but it does look about the same, about 4 dB of a boost, centering around 8 or 9 kilohertz. This one you can see starts a little bit after, more like 6 kilohertz instead of 5. And then the figure 8 starts earlier. It starts down here. So, but it doesn't have as tall of a presence boost. It's only a little over 2 dB, it looks like, as opposed to it's only about 2 dB here, but it's about 4 dB on Omni mode. So there's another example of not perfect. And then as far as bass, there looks like they're pretty linear down here. Of course, these are all averages. In any case, we could nerd out all day long, but we're not going to. Let's take a listen to it. Now, I am talking about this and approaching this very much from the perspective of voiceover or, capturing spoken word audio. So we are not, there's going to be a different set of considerations potentially for musicians using this as a microphone for instruments or anything like that. But at least here, let's get a sense. Now, I will say this is a very common or renowned microphone for voiceover as well. I think a lot of people also, when they're getting started, when they don't have necessarily quite as much to invest as a Neumann U87 costs, they will often go for the Neumann TLM 103. And in the samples I've heard, those microphones are definitely different. My brother used to own the TLM 103, and it's a little bit more hyped in the high frequencies, in my experience. So it's a slightly different beast, as they say. Okay, so here we have this up on a stand here. All right, is everybody good in the chat here? I'm noticing some funny stuff going on here. Let's see what we've got. Hello to everybody, by the way. I'm so grateful that we have this really happy, friendly vibe in the chat. Thank you for that. Let's see. Audio Buff flew over our house last Sunday night coming home from a job. Took a pic, but it was too dark. But I think I saw Danny in the front yard looking at fossils. That was probably us. Yeah, I think that was probably us, Jude. If I'd known, I would have waved. All right. Did you have a date night? We did. We did. We got some local ice cream, and we, believe it or not, we played frisbee golf, which was fun. Just some updates here. The last install, I hit plus or minus 1.5 dB at every seat in the auditorium. It was awesome. That's a good install. Audio Buff, good work there. For those that aren't familiar with what he means there, when you do installed sound in a venue of some sort, auditorium in this case, one of the challenges is that where you place the speakers and the type of speakers that you use, it's really hard to make a consistent experience across the entire auditorium from every seat in the house. And Audio Buff was able to achieve no difference greater than 1.5 dB at every seat in that auditorium, which is really impressive, really, really good. So congratulations, Audio Buff. Good work. All right. Good for Danny. She can pursue her passion indeed. She is out loving that whole outdoors and the fossils and everything else. All right. Here's a good question from Eric. Will the mic help me influence friends? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It will potentially buy you... Well, let's switch over to this other mic while we're here. So we've got the Neumann U87. I'm working at a little bit of a distance here, probably 8 inches, something like that. Let's just go ahead and switch over. So you've been hearing the Earthworks Ethos up until now. I'm going to turn the phantom power on and let it settle in. We are running the Neumann U87 through a Universal Audio 6176 channel strip, which is a preamplifier, an equalizer, and a compressor. And we're not using any of the equalizer right now. It's set flat. And we'll talk more about that in just a little bit, but here we go. Let's switch over. Okay, here we are on the Neumann U87 Ai. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and talk. We have with us today. I was going to bring, for my birthday, I received a lovely little kit that has taco recipes in it. Little cards, like, yeah, just cards with lots of different taco recipes. I was going to read from that, but I forgot to bring it down here. Of course, it's strategically located in the dining area where I will use it. But for today, instead, what we have is the owner's manual, the operating instructions for the Model 6176 channel strip from Universal Audio. This will be nothing but fun to read. So just giving you some sample here on the Neumann U87 Ai. Thank you for purchasing the 6176 channel strip. The 6176 combines a modified channel of our 2-610 vacuum tube microphone preamplifier with our 1176 LN all-discrete solid-state FET-based limiter compressor. The 2610 was inspired by the microphone preamp section of the original 610 console designed by my father, M.T. Bill Putnam, in 1960. The 610 was a rotary control console, and it was also the first console of a modular design. Although technologically simple compared to modern consoles, the 610 possessed a warmth and character that kept it in demand for decades. A prominent component of my father's United Western Studios in Los Angeles, the 610 was used on many classic recordings by Frank Sinatra, Sarah Vaughan, as well as the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds and the Doors' L.A. Woman. Okay, now just to kind of give you some contrast, because it's always good to get some contrast. Here we are back on the Earthworks Ethos. All right, now let's go back to the chat here. Matt Ruff, continuing this conversation. Oh, Eric, will it help you influence your friends? Maybe. It'll help your friends recognize you perhaps as a audio professional or enthusiast, depending on what you prefer, with very fine taste, I suppose. Maybe that's one way to think about it. So again, we're on the Earthworks ethos again. Matt says, the last place I visited as a sound engineer was so bad, I swear it was plus or minus 15. Yeah, and that's not uncommon, unfortunately. This is me living vicariously through those who can afford this mic. And that, honestly, Linda, is the point today. The question is this microphone, switching back over to the Neumann again, is this microphone worth the ridiculous amount of money that they charge for it? Now, I'm not saying no one should buy it. Let's just switch over to the Mac again. Current pricing from B&H for the nickel finished studio set, which includes the shock mount, like I showed you, $3,750. This is more expensive than when I bought it. I have the black version here. Without the shock mount, it's $3,600. So it looks like they've, in the wake of inflation and tariffs, it looks like what they've done is they've reduced the price of the shock mount a little bit, because I believe the shock mount itself used to be $300. Now it looks like it's approximately $150 when you buy it in the kit. So, yeah, question, why would you ever spend that much money? And there are lots of answers to that. One answer that I've heard from a voiceover artist, actually that came on the live stream a little over a year ago. I'm trying to remember exactly now, but lots of different perspectives, often used in voiceover. And the reason that some people cite it is that some people say it's a very neutral sound. I don't think so. I think it's actually somewhat colored, but in a fairly pleasant way. But some people do this, and this is the same thing in production sound sometimes. They buy it because it's recognized, so getting jobs, in theory, becomes easier, although in the world now of AI, I don't know if that's changing some. But in any case, I think a lot of producers can assume that if you use this microphone for your voiceover work, that you're probably pretty serious and probably experienced enough to not be someone who just started last week, is my guess, how that mindset works. But in any case, let's see here. James says, I watch because during the conversations about expensive stuff, I hear gold insights into many other things that help my prosumer process and learning curve. I think that's a great way to look at it. All right, Henry. Acoustic room treatment, number one, always, then find the mic that complements your voice. I think that's really good advice as well. My question is, how is this doing in this room? It sounds, I don't know. Let's keep going. We'll find out. I'm sure you'll tell me in the chat here. OG Quasi, given just the specs, is there a big difference to cheaper mics like the NT1? I assume you're talking about the RODE NT1, which we have right here. This is the Signature series. We'll go ahead and pull that up in just a moment here. But before we do that, let me do something here. I want to demonstrate the high-pass filter so you can hear that. Okay, I've switched back to the Earthworks for the moment so that this doesn't crackle in your ear. Okay. And here we are with the high-pass filter turned on the Neumann U87 Ai. And here we are again with the high-pass filter turned off. Wow, definitely more power coming out in the low frequencies there. We will get to the NT1 in just a moment here. Matt says, I don't own one anymore, but if you're in a studio here in Music City, you will see many of them. You can test 15 U87 and you will not hear any difference in them. Not in a studio. Don't get one. In other words, it's not going to compensate for your room and the acoustics of your room if you haven't treated it. AudioBuff says, in my opinion, when I assume when you've used the U87, it still stands out from the competition, but not as much as it did 25 years ago. Yeah, I think that's probably true, probably accurate. All right, Daniel says, how does this compare to a Shure MV7DB? Well, it's a very different microphone. It's a condenser versus a are you talking about the Shure SM7DB, or is there now an MV7DB? I'm not sure. Maybe there's an MV7DB now too. I don't have that microphone, so I'm not sure, but very different apples to oranges kind of comparison. I think that a lot of times you're going to find a lot of voiceover artists will probably prefer, most seem to prefer condenser microphones over dynamic mics. I generally use a condenser mic when I'm doing voiceover professionally. AudioBuff, good point. The mic has been around a long time, and as such, some manufacturers have made mics that can compete with its quality. But for its day, I imagine it was such a fab mic to use. And I agree. All right. Matt says the cleanness of the mic is what makes it such a fan to a studio. And Mark asks, it comes with a maid? Haha. Can someone slap Mark Holloway for me? Hi, Matt. Okay, we got some fun. AudioBuff, will you tell Mark Holloway I'm not talking to him? Okay, LOL. Here's a good question. Do clients actually care about choice of microphone as long as the recording sounds good? It depends on the client. I think some do. And I think some are, when they're vetting, I mean, I'm thinking again from a voiceover perspective, when they're vetting, a producer is vetting which voiceover artist to use, sometimes they will ask, what's your equipment? So just depends on who it is. All right. Okay, when was your birthday? It was in July. And by the way, isn't it your 10-year anniversary now on YouTube? It's actually my 12th anniversary on YouTube. Well, it depends on when you want to start counting. My first video was posted in 2009 on YouTube. I first picked up uploading videos very regularly, at least once a week, or right around once a week in 2013, I believe it was. So it's actually about 12 years now. Peter Pepper says, Earthworks sounds better for your voice. Again, we're still on the Neumann U87 right now. The Neumann sounds more sibilant than your Earthworks. I think that's absolutely right. And happy anniversary. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. Thanks for being a part of the community here. Grant says, since I have Isotope RX11 Advanced and Nectar 4 Advanced software, does the Neumann U87 Ai make as much of a difference in the VO chain? It depends. It depends. Well, first of all, it depends on the space that you're recording in. It depends on what microphone you're using presently. It depends on how much EQ you're having to do to kind of sculpt your voice the way you want it. But so lots of different factors, but it can make a difference. You can get the Neumann also secondhand, but even for full price is totally worth it. Just not for everything like every other mic. Yeah, it's a good mic. Honestly, the reason I own it, when I'm doing voiceover, I don't use it. I use a mic that fits my voice better. And the reason that I have it is because I do microphone reviews, and having this as a reference is really helpful because it's a microphone that everyone knows the sonic signature of, even if they don't know that they do. They do. Out of mic, the sound isn't as good as several other mics, but it's very clean and adjustable. Yeah, that's the thing that I have found. Lots of sibilance on Curtis's voice with the U87. You can sculpt it quite nicely. Well, hello, Da Vinci Girl. It's good to have you here. Matt says, I'm going to break down and get the Lewitt LCT 1040 large diaphragm tube FET condenser microphone system would compare to the U87. That's going to be fun. Kevin says, with advances in technology and consumer software, do you feel the gap between high-end microphones gear and middle-end or prosumer microphones gear less tightened, or has tightened, excuse me? Yeah, I think it definitely has. In fact, this would be a good time to switch. So I'm going to switch back over to the Earthworks, and we're going to swap out the NT1 for the Neumann U87. So here we go. All right, back on the Earthworks ethos at the moment. We're going to turn off the phantom power for the Neumann and let that settle. Unplug it. Pop it out. Pop the RODE NT1 in. And I will say, it's my sense that a lot of the less expensive large diaphragm microphones have been aiming at the Neumann U87 for decades now. Okay, let's go ahead and I may have to adjust things a little bit, but let's start here. And before we can do that, of course, phantom power on. Once the phantom power is on and settled, here we are on the RODE NT1. RODE NT1. I feel like this one seems, I don't know, it seems like it needs a bit more gain. Checking our levels here. 1, 2, 1, 2. I often use the RODE NT1 when I'm doing voiceover. It seems to suit my voice pretty nicely. It's a little bit less sibilant than the Neumann, it seems like. But it seems there's also something in the mids that's a little bit different. I could use the Neumann and post-process it, but I find that with the RODE NT1, I don't need to do quite as much to it. A little bit gentler. So yeah, to answer your question, Kevin, I think yes. I think we're seeing less of a difference between the expensive microphones and the more affordable microphones, like the RODE NT1 Signature Series. In this case, the Signature Series is, let's take a look here. Switch on over to the Mac in just a moment. Get up on B&H Photo. There we are. Okay. RODE NT1 Signature Series, which you can get for $159 US. What's also interesting, if I may say this, I have been using the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 audio interface for the last couple of weeks, the 4th generation version. And for work, I've used the 3rd generation version for quite a while. And I've used the 3rd generation probably for the last 3 months, 4 months maybe. It's been great. Is there a discernible difference between using a Universal Audio Apollo? The Apollo is really nice if I need to do real-time processing. So, for example, if I'm working on a Zoom call, I can do that real-time processing, which is nice. Don't get that on the Scarlett, of course, but it's it does a nice job, and that's an example of a $200 audio interface as opposed to it wasn't this expensive when I bought it, but the Universal Audio 6176, which is not an audio interface, which is just a channel strip, is now $3,500 US. So I feel like I have to be a little closer up on the road here to get the same levels. I don't know. Anyway, great question, Kevin. And yes, the answer is yes, in my humble opinion, which is never humble when someone says humble, I think, in my opinion. Mark says, sold my U87 since my room couldn't do it justice. Switched to an MKH 416 RE20 combo instead. Curtis, with your great room, which approach would you take? RODE NT1, it turns out. I would tune it more to the voice than... I mean, the room is definitely a factor, obviously. Definitely a big factor. But now that this room is pretty well treated, for me, it's about tuning it to the voice, and I almost always use the NT1 instead. Mark says there is a certain resonance with the U87, for lack of a good explanation, that gives it a unique sound. Is that the result of the UA6176? It could be. The 6176 is right now just applying some mild compression and amplification, and that's it. So, but it's a vintage design, and it is made to be character imposing. So yeah, there's definitely that. But I find even with the Neumann U87, even with a much more straight ahead just audio interface, there is definitely a resonance to it, and especially on my voice, it brings out some of the nasal quality of my voice a little bit more, in my opinion. So, DaVinci Resolve, or DaVinci Girl, I care. If someone offers Rode as mic for my church marriage, he is out of the job. We are strict and such. Mobile phones forbidden by anyone. Guests have to sign in front. Use of mobile phones not allowed. That's fine. At your wedding, you can run it your way. I actually am fine with the Rode microphones. This is manufactured in Sydney by Rode. I've had a very good experience with the Rode NT1. Various versions, NT1A, NT1 4th generation, NT1 5th generation, and NT1 Signature series have all worked quite nicely for me. All right. Henry says, I love the Lawton Audio Atlantis. Let's look that up while we're here. Why not? Let's take a look if this is the one. It's the Lawton Audio Atlantis FC387 large diaphragm multi-pattern condenser microphone. Sounds like a very similar thing to the U87. Let's get a closer look here. Yep, cardioid, omni, and figure 8. Forward, normal, and gentle timbres. That's interesting. So it looks like there's some sort of timbre adjustment. 3-stage gain control, wooden box, dual diaphragm condenser. It's created with help from award-winning engineer and producer Fab DuPont. The Lawton Audio Atlantis is a large diaphragm multi-pattern condenser mic boasting the sonic flexibility of 3 different mics as well as selectable polar patterns with adjustable gain. So what I want to see is there's gain, sensitivity, polar pattern, and pad. Is there like a switch or something for... Oh, let's see. Let's get a closer up here. There's a pad. I'm not sure what this one is over here. Whoops. How do I... No, I don't want to do that. Go back here. What is that switch? Is that the polar pattern switch? I think it might be. Is there something on the back? Yeah, that's the polar pattern switch on the right. Pad on the left. And this is that other switch on the back. So gentle, what did they call it again? Forward, normal, and gentle timbres. Oh, there it was. Forward, normal, and gentle. Okay, interesting. That's really interesting. I had not used that one before. Would love to give it a try. In my humble opinion, there are better preamp options than the UAD610 for the U87 Ai. Any 1073 A design Specifica. I'm sure we do have a Shelford channel here, but we're not using it today. Just for practical purposes, I don't have the ability on the live stream to crawl behind there and swap out the cable. All right, so this is the Rode NT1. Let's switch on back. All right, we are on the Earthworks Ethos here. We are turning off the phantom power. Popping out the Rode. Back to the Neumann. Phantom power on, settling in. If you missed it earlier, I'm going to switch over. Now we are on the Neumann again through the Universal Audio 6176. The 6176 is a tube preamplifier, so it's definitely imparting some sound. Matt says, I never liked the NT1 with my voice, just like you don't like the Lewitt with your voice. Yeah, the Lewitt was too sibilant for my voice, or my voice was too sibilant for the Lewitt. Maybe that's a way to look at it. And it's probably a little too sibilant for the Neumann, to be honest, as well. Lloyd says, it sounds like you lost weight. Haha. The fullness of the 87 is nice for me. I could see why you would want to use the RODE and be done. Yeah, it's, budget of obviously is a major consideration. The weight of the 87 is nice, I will say that. And I could absolutely use the 87. I would need to do a little bit of sibilance management. And I would also probably, I think it's somewhere between 1 and 2 kilohertz is a little much with my voice on here as well. I do not know what happens, but today and in the stream there is no synchronization of the lips with audio. I don't know. Sometimes I have found devices need if you refresh the browser or just quit the browser and rejoin the stream, sometimes that seems to help. All right. All right. Linda says, the Earthworks wins for this stream. Are we? We're all saying, in my humble opinion now, we need to be careful about that, friends. Grant says, I find the Neumann BCM 104 particularly good for my voiceover work. Since it operates on a single cardioid pattern, do you consider that a more affordable alternative? Grant, I have not used the BCM 104, but for those that are not familiar with it, let's go back to the microphones here. And I'm going to take your note off screen here for just a moment. BCM 104. I think I saw that here. Here it is right here, this guy. Broadcast, podcast, and streaming, all new speech optimized condenser capsule. I assume that this is yes, it is a condenser microphone. Okay, cool. I mean, I don't know. This is one of those things, Grant, where you just have to put your voice in it and see what happens. That's the trick. At a certain level, if you've got a nicely treated acoustic space where you're recording, the next step is getting one that works with your voice and where you can achieve the end product that the quality at the end that you want. All right. Matt says, Linda, Earthworks wins on most of their mics. Who's a fan? I do like the Earthworks ethos quite a bit, actually. Camille says, can you also do a drop test with your U87 from different heights? Sorry, no, I cannot. All right, here's a good question. Mark says, how would you compare the U87 with your JZ V11? For those not familiar with it, JZ Microphones is a microphone company based, I believe, in Latvia. They make a variety of microphones that sort of pay homage to the vintage microphones, and they make one called the V11, which looks like a deodorant stick, honestly. That's what Danny calls it, and it suits my voice quite nicely. I would say that the JZ V11 is a much darker microphone than the Neumann U87. That's the biggest thing that stands out to me. It's also seems like it has a bit of just a slight mid scoop as well, which is a part of the reason why it works well for my voice. Yes, that it's just a good fit for my voice. The thing is, I haven't loved all of JZ microphones. The V11 though, I really, 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 really like. But in any case, let's keep going here. All right. You gotta love the BCM 104 because it's just so funky looking. Mike H says, personal preference, but the U87 sizzle gets grating to my ears. especially on my voice. Let's go ahead and apply a little bit of a de-esser, shall we? Let's just manage that since we can. Okay, she sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells. Ooh, yeah, that's definitely taking care of some of it. Is that a little better? Now it sounds more zippy. Zip, zip. All right, she sells seashells. Whoa, that's a bit much. She sells seashells by the seashore. By the seashore, she sells seashells. This is with, and this is without. She sells seashells. Whew, that's rough. She sells seashells by the seashore. I don't know if I love that, but there's a little de-esser for a little bit while we're still working through the chat here. I think a different pre for your voice would tame the sibilance. The U87 Ai is not that sibilant per se. Maybe Tom, but my voice is extraordinarily sibilant. So we have used it with the Shelford channel, and we get plenty of sibilance there as well, which is obviously a Neve design. All right. Kevin asks, random question, have you ever been to the headquarters of any mic brands? I will be in Berlin in January. Your stream made me wonder about visiting Neumann's headquarters there. I have. I have been to the Sennheiser headquarters in Wiedemark, Germany, and also had a tour of the factory, where in fact I believe a lot of the Neumann microphones are actually manufactured. I don't know if the U87 Ai is manufactured there, but they do manufacture some of them. All right. Audio Buff wants to know, is your earthworks flat as well during the test? Switching back. We are now on the earthworks. 1 second here. Getting the faders reset. Okay, yes, on the earthworks, confirming that the de-esser is off. It is, however, going through a compressor. We're doing a little bit of light compression, and there is a gate. That's without the gate. You can definitely hear the things in the room here. That's with the gate. No EQ, but there is a high pass filter at 70 Hertz on the earthworks, just for reference there. All right, let's head on over to our questions. We had a couple of questions that were submitted ahead of time, so we're going to go take a look at those. Let's go here. Oh, whoops. Not as smooth when Danny's not here, is it? Here's one from Grant. Grant, thanks for the question. I currently do voiceovers with a Neumann BCM 104 condenser mic attached to the Volt 276 preamp audio interface. Would it make more sense for me to purchase the Rupert Neve Designs Portico 5017 portable desktop mic preamp rather than saving for the Neumann U87 Ai? I'm pleased with my current vocals for e-learning and corporate demos, but I'm curious if I would benefit from higher grade equipment for getting into voiceovers for broadcasting, documentary, anime, and video games. I would actually go back, if you didn't catch it when we had our live stream with Lily Wexu. Again, I think it was about a little over a year ago. She talks a little bit about that, so it's worth checking in with her, but I don't know. I mean, the Volt 276 is more of an entry-level preamplifier, to be fair, but I don't know if it's going to make a world of difference. I don't know. I'm finding that for a lot of things, if you have really, really tuned your ears, if you listen super carefully, you can hear the difference, but it depends on your audience and if you're going to be doing this professionally, your clients. If they are demanding that you have name brands like Neumann and Neve, Rupert Neve Designs, then maybe so. But or if you've got the cash and you're just dying of curiosity, then you certainly could. And then you're never going to have that as a... I can't imagine anyone saying, well, we don't want to hire you because you're using a Neumann U87 and a Rupert Neve Designs Portico for your voiceover signal chain. I can't imagine that happening, but I don't know that you're necessarily going to notice a night and day difference. The Volt 276, I will say, I have that audio interface. I like it. The compressor is noisy as heck, though. I don't know what they did with that thing. It's too bad, too. Otherwise, it seems like a pretty good audio interface. So that's a short version, Grant, is maybe, maybe not, but, you know, I wouldn't go into debt to buy those things for sure. I just don't know that you're going to get the bang for your buck there necessarily. Matt confirms also he can't use the Ethos in his office because of noise issues. All right. Next question is from Joe. This is not related to microphones directly. I'm having crashes when using Fairlight in Resolve 20 Studio. I'm using a Tascam 102 Ai interface for audio in and out and Windows 11. Playback and other Resolve tabs works fine, but Fairlight locks up after playback of just a few seconds of audio. I think the issue is the Tascam ASIO driver, but not sure yet. My question is this. Are ASIO drivers pretty much standardized now, or do they have to be routinely updated as Windows and Resolve are updated? I'm going to need to turn to the audience here who uses Windows and DaVinci Resolve. I don't know about the ASIO driver world. It's my understanding that they can be a little bit finicky, but I'm not saying that from experience. I'm saying that from all the forum posts about ASIO drivers that I seem to see. So if anyone in the community has experience with Resolve 20, with a device that needs an ASIO driver, and you have experienced any sort of crashes or locking up in Fairlight, if you have anything you can share with Joe. I would also say, Joe, if you're using the studio version, you can contact Blackmagic support. They will support you because you have the studio version. So you can actually email them, explain what's happening, and they should be able to help you out there. So, all right. That is what we have submitted ahead of time for questions. How are we doing here on time? Looks like we're okay on time for now. All right. Bowls Promo TV says, thank you for the talk about ferrite thingies the other week. It helped a lot. Ferrite cores, you got it. Henry says, FYI, I think everyone knows Neumann is bought by Sennheiser. I didn't know that they were owned by Sennheiser. I knew they were doing some of the manufacturing of the Neumann microphones, but I didn't know they owned them. So thanks for that. How much gain reduction do you usually get with your compression settings? Examples, normal speaking and laughing, joking subjects. So well, that depends. So as I'm talking right now, I'll go take a look at the compressor. Unfortunately, I can't share this screen because it's on the Mackie DLZ Creator. But I'm probably getting just 1 or 2 dB of attenuation at the start of my sentences. And then if I laugh, probably 3 dB. So it's pretty mild. It's not super hardcore compression. It is a 3-to-1 ratio. For dialogue, I generally try not to go too much higher than that. For the lowest setting for the Universal Audio 1176, which is part of the 6176, 4-to-1 is its lowest ratio. Well, you can go to 1-to-1, but that's just to impart the flavor of the compressor without actually doing any compression. Yeah, so that hopefully that gives you a sense. I've got my threshold right now at minus 14 dB on the Mackie, and 3-to-1 compression ratio, 2.2 milliseconds attack time, release is 102 milliseconds. Those are our current settings. Not that they're perfect, but that's where we do it. All right, Camille asks, where do you do most of your microphone processing? In the Rupert Neve, Apollo, Mackie DLZ, or ATEM? It depends on if I'm talking about voiceover. A lot of times I will, if I'm doing something for kind of a special event. So at work, I do some voiceover work. For example, for our conference last year, I voiced the opening video. In that case, I used the Shelford channel. In cases where I'm doing just a quick and, just like a placeholder, or for something that's lower impact, I guess is the best way to say it, I'll just use a Scarlett and a RODE NT1 and go. And then we'll just do some post-processing and we're on our way. So hopefully that helps. Peter asks, is the Earthworks supercardioid? It has lots of proximity. Yes, it is a broadcast. Let's just look it up here. Let's go to Earthworks. Earthworks, they call it Earthworks Audio. Here we go. Okay, switching over to the Mac. All right, perfect sound right out of the box. Look at that. That looks like a new bass drum microphone. Let's go up to speech, podcasting mics. We have the Ethos here. Now comes with Isotope, I believe RX, and VIA, RX Elements and VIA. Okay, let's get the specifications here. Polar pattern. I think they call it hypercardioid, and it's somewhere between cardioid and hyper. But yeah, it's got plenty of proximity effect if you're looking for that, or you can work with it at a little more distance that it won't. But it is they do definitely bill it as a broadcast mic, and it's supposed to have that kind of proximity warmth to it. The question is just why you use Resolve 20 for production. It's not the best release. Somebody has an opinion here. DaVinci Girl says audio with their AI is just useless bad. For some, maybe not for others. Depends on what you're doing. Udo says Resolve Studio 20.0.1 on Windows 10 Pro with latest updates and a Zoom UAC 232. An ASIO driver. No need to update the driver here. No crashes at all. Well, it does say ASIO is fairly standard, but should be updated when available. Does it lock up for you if you use the stock audio system? That's a good question. Radkong, would you say buying a MixPre 6 Mark I is a good idea in order to gain more knowledge and experience in professional audio recording, coming from a Zoom F3, F6, and H5 owner? It depends on what you're doing. I don't know that you're going to experience a huge difference in audio quality necessarily. I think it's all about skills in using those. At the H5, maybe, yes, but unless that's the H5 Studio, the new one. But the F3 and the F6, it's just different. It's not going to be the 32-bit float, so it's about you're going to be a little bit more focused on gain staging appropriately. I never found that to be as much of an issue as some people seem to indicate it is. Maybe that's because I'm old school. Whenever I tell people that I rarely use 32-bit float, they think I'm just, I guess, old-fashioned and sticking my head in the sand. I don't have anything against anyone using 32-bit float, but I also just didn't find that not setting gain was that much of a game changer for me personally. So there are a few cases where I found it useful, but for the most part, I just setting gain. So that's the thing with the MixPre 6 Mark I is there's no 32-bit float. It does have nice limiters. It does have, I find the ergonomics of it a little bit better than the F3 and the F6 personally, but there's also a downside. The F6 has that really nice NPF battery slide on the back, which I really like. Unfortunately, you had to buy a separate battery sled for the MixPre to get that. And I will say this, I would not try to run the MixPre on AA batteries. It's futile. It's much more power hungry than the Zoom F-series recorders. So it goes through batteries a little bit more quickly. So you definitely are going to want that NPF battery sled if you get it. I don't know. It's a personal preference. If you can get it for a song and it's not going to hurt your budget at all and you want to try, I don't know if it's going to help you gain more knowledge and experience necessarily. I don't know. That's a tough one. How's that for non-committal? Sorry about that. But yeah, it's there is also in the production sound world, if someone asks, a producer asks you, do you have sound devices, equipment, you can say yes, if that's going to help you get the jobs. So that's something to keep in mind there. All right, friends, it looks like Curtis is a curmudgeon, if I spelled that right. I would say this, Audio Buff, if you're going to call me a curmudgeon, you had better spell it correctly. Udo says, maybe a question for another time. How do you sync audio and video for live streams? I never streamed live. So what we do to ensure that they're in sync, there are a variety of ways you can go about it, but the way that we do it here is that I run the microphones into a mixer, in this case the Mackie DLZ Creator. I send the line out from the mixer into my camera, and so it is by nature pretty much synced there. This Mackie DLZ is a digital mixer, so there is something like, I think, 3 or 4 milliseconds of latency, but that's not enough to really throw it out of sync substantially. So that's how we get them in sync. Now, there are other ways that you can do it if you're running your audio directly into your switcher, not through your camera. Then you're probably going to need to apply an offset in the switcher itself. Or if you're using something like OBS, an encoding/switching app, then you'll need to apply the offset there. And usually what that means is you slow the audio down or buffer it for a set period of time so that it is in sync with the video. It always takes, in almost all cases, it takes video longer to get to the switcher than it does for the audio to get into the computer or wherever you're feeding it. So that's the kind of the short answer. Mark asks if you can mix assist and noise assist on the MixPre 6 Mark I. I don't remember. Worth a check. That could be a nice addition. Although they do have auto mix on the Zoom F6 for sure. I can't remember if the F3 does as well. I think it does. It's not as nice as Mix Assist, but it does have an auto mix feature. And then Noise Assist is a handy one, especially if you're doing short turnaround or live types of things. Although I don't know why. I generally wouldn't use like a Zoom or a Sound Devices mixer for live production if I could avoid it. I'd rather have a mixing board for that. But yeah, that's a good question, Mark. If it does support them, and you could find that out from the Sound Devices website, Radcong, then that may actually be a useful thing there. I guess I want to use the knobs. I like the analog experience, which I feel the MixPre gives. $450 USD. Yeah, it does have knobs, and they are, in my opinion, more ergonomic than what you're going to get than what you have on the F6 or the F3. So, $450 for knobs? Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Keith says yes for the battery sled for the MixPre. Completely agree. Gotta. How did that happen? Did I never switch back? This is what happens when I stream solo. Mike H says jumped to Windows 11 a few weeks ago. UI annoyances aside, I haven't had any issues with my MixPre 3.2, ASIO drivers, NVIDIA drivers, or Resolve 20.0.1. Okay. OBS? Yes, Open Broadcast Software. It is a live streaming switching / encoding app that's available. It's open. It's free. I think it's open source as well. All right. Just running my way through here. DaVinci Girl says, by the way, PreSonus ERI 3 Mark II are incredible, good near-field monitors for near-field for a price of less than $100 for a pair. Just did a test and bought them for Dolby Atmosphere use. Very interesting. All right, just doing a final. Chris, another great Sunday session. We missed Danny. Thank you for your time. Until next time. Likewise, everybody, get out there, make some great sound, and we'll talk to you again next week. Take care. Oh, but before I do that, I need to do this. Bye.